What's up, Buffalo Bill fans? You knew you were going to see my face at some point during this week to talk about the newly hired head coach of the Buffalo Bills, Doug Marrone. He's currently filling out his staff pretty rapidly. I mean, comparatively to the other teams, I mean, there's five of them that still don't have head coaches, and um, I don't know if they obviously haven't moved forward. I think some of those teams are still looking for general managers as well. So this kind of puts the Bills a little bit ahead of the curve, someplace they haven't been in a while. And I'm going to talk about the coach. I'm going to talk about my opinions. And then I'm going to talk about, a lot of, people have trepidation, people have doubts, there's guarded optimism, and then there's just flat out, you know, like there's no way this can work. And a lot of it is there's no way that it can work because it's the Bills, and nothing they do ever works. And the people who are optimistic are, well, it's completely different, and based on the fact that it's completely different, it will work. I am not going to judge this man by anything. I'm going to start judging him when he's on the sidelines with a headset on and he starts coaching this team for me to see. I like the fact he said he's not going to talk about players in the media, and he's not going to cross that line. Players like that. Players want to know that their coach is not going to railroad them in front of the press, in front of cameras. That's good. I like the fact that he said he wanted to be there. That's important. The fact is, I want to talk about facts. Marrone could have taken other jobs. Could have had the Eagles job. Could have had the Browns job. They were busy trying to romance Chip Kelly, who just wants to flirt with the NFL. Meanwhile, I personally think he's just waiting for the New England job to eventually open up when Belichick decides to step aside. But again, that's a different topic for a different day. He could have had other coaching jobs in this league. San Diego was hot after him. We know the Browns were. We know he was on. So this is the first time in quite a while, and Bills fans can't deny this, that there was a hot guy other teams wanted. You could talk about his college record. You could talk about all his flaws, and my counter arguments to that is that program was in the doldrum, in the pits, and he had to help resurrect that program. Now he doesn't have to worry about going out on the road, recruiting, trying to talk some 17-year-old kid on why he should go to Syracuse and why he should, commit to his program. He doesn't have to do that. I like the fact that he's sort of an imposing guy. He's a former offensive lineman. He looks like he can command a room. He's not a kind of a frail, underspoken older man like Jerron or Gailey, who are just kind of, feeble looking in some ways, should I say. I think he's going to know where the ball is when the field goal is going to be kicked. And I know people are going to want to talk about the coordinators. People are high on the defensive coordinator, kind of on the offensive coordinator. Hackett was in the organization before. Again, I want to know who he's calling plays for at quarterback. That's every offensive coordinator in the world can look like a genius, depending on who they're calling plays for. I mean, Mike McCoy probably could get a head coaching job because of who he's calling plays for. He's calling plays for Peyton Manning. So he's going to look good. Josh McDaniels is a classic example of a guy who looked like a genius calling plays for Tom Brady. Went and got a head coaching job in Denver and then got fired. Again, head coaches that are good come in all different shapes and sizes, and how they get there and how they arrive at that spot, there's no tried and true formula for it. You can cite me a guy who, he was an average coach. Marv Levy was a failed NFL head coach, but he had a second kick at the can with the Bills. He had Jim Kelly at quarterback. He had a bunch of Hall of Famers on the roster, and he made it work. He was just the right kind of temperament for that room, and they'll all say that he just knew how to handle them. Probably because Marv didn't have a big ego. He kind of acquiesced to them. Kelly wanted to call his own plays and run his offense, and he let him do it. So we'll see what happens. I'm not going to sit here and judge these guys by anything. They start off with a clean slate. I'm not going to sit here and lament about the past and talk about Gailey and all his shortcomings, because that's behind us. I don't want to talk about that anymore. I don't want to talk about anything that's happened in the last 6 years, but only the fact that Marrone is unlike the prior candidates because he had a job at Syracuse. He was going to stay at, I mean, he had a job at Syracuse. He wasn't going to get fired. He wasn't, he had NFL opportunities. There's a reason he had NFL opportunities. And we don't know those. We're not in the room with the man. We're not speaking to him. I mean, look at Nick Saban. The guy was a successful college coach at LSU, got an NFL job, and he bombed miserably in the NFL. There's been guys who were, I mean, I believe Jim Harbaugh was a special teams coordinator before he became an NFL head coach with the Eagles. And he's turned out to be a pretty decent head coach. Mike Smith, nobody knew Mike Smith was, but he's got a pretty decent quarterback. And that's what I want to see. I want to see going forward who their quarterback is. And everybody automatically wants to pencil Nazib's name in there. And that's, you want to play connect the dots, that's fine. But so much is going to happen between where we're at on the calendar date and the draft, where the bulk of your roster from now until then is going to be formulated, and then, you know, they'll put the wheels in motion once free agency hits. So I'm not going to write out a depth chart. I'm not going to sit here and try to formulate a mock draft or any kind of hypothetical stuff like that. I mean, they're fun. It's cute. Trust me, I'm a fan of mock drafts more so than anybody, but I'm not going to bother. I love the fact that Buffalo has a step on everybody else. That's important. Where in years past they were behind the 8 ball because everybody kind of had to go to Ralph, and everybody had to go through Ralph, and dealing with an older person is a lot hard. I think with Brandon at the helm, it expedites things extremely, and having him in the building as the boss, the de facto owner boss, is important. Having people know that the boss is in the building and in the room in the office is important. When you have an absentee owner who hardly ever, he doesn't even go to games because he's an old man, he's probably physically unable, that means something. And it means something to have your boss sitting there saying, hey, you report to me, I want to see what's going on. There was a collaborative effort, things were moving along swiftly, and doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work. Again, I'm not going to sit here and endorse you on why Marrone is going to work and be guaranteed to work. I don't know that. Again, when he starts coaching games and how he puts this roster together is important to me. He's already made a good hire on his staff, I think. I think, you know, Hackett's a young guy. People cut their teeth. They got to do it somewhere. You know, how did Marrone cut his teeth? He cut his teeth with the Saints as an offensive coordinator. Sean Payton saw something in him that he liked. And I know he wasn't calling the plays, but still, he was put in that position. And I think the same's going to happen with Hackett. I think offensively, it's going to be a collaborative effort between him and Hackett. It's not going to be all Hackett. I firmly believe that. Hackett might call the plays, but they're definitely going to go through Marrone. And that's just my opinion. But Pettine, I think this is Pettine's show on defense. Stepped out of Rex's shadow, which is what he wanted. I think he was tired of the circus in New York and with the Jets and all the drama and BS that goes on there. I think the man just wants to coach football, wants to move on and be a professional and stop with all this ridiculousness. You know, where at Buffalo, it's a lot more of a low-key place, and the media isn't, you know, constantly at your heels, and I think that appealed to Pettine, and it moved along swiftly. Whether he runs a 4-3 or a 3-4, who knows? I mean, the Jets played a lot of 4-3 last year. They played a lot of 46. They had, you know, Copels, Muhammad Wilkerson, DeVito, and Sione Poha on the line at the same time. I don't see any of the Jets. Everybody wants to start penciling in former Jets to come there. They're not going to have old linebackers that make a lot of money. They're not going to go run out and pick up Calvin Pace or, you know, Bart Scott. Those guys are not upgrades at linebacker. The Jets' run defense was not good this year. Their pass defense was really good. Their run defense, and that's minus Revis most of the season, their pass defense was not good. I'm sorry, their run defense was not good. Their linebackers are older and slower, and they had a lot of Poha and DeVito were kind of nicked up most of the year, and Copels and Wilkerson had to play a lot more than I think that they were used to playing, especially Copels, coming out of college, and Wilkerson in his second year. But Pettine is intriguing. I like him. Whatever he decides to do with the defense, I'm for it, because it couldn't be. I mean, it could always be worse, but I don't know how much worse it possibly could be. I mean, Gailey was clueless on defense for 3 straight seasons of 400 points, and just teams looked like they were just having a field day against the Bills. I mean, it looked like every other time the Bills played somebody, they were racking up record numbers, or they were personal bests against the Bills. So again, till everything is put together, till we start seeing what the team starts to look like coming together, who they choose to move forward with, who they choose to keep, a lot of things are going to happen. You got a new coach. You essentially, in my personal opinion, I think you got a new GM with Whaley. They won't come out and say that just yet, but I think after the draft, Nix will be slowly ushered out, and we'll start to see how they put this team together. Quarterback is a must. We know that. They could use another wide receiver. They definitely could use linebackers, and they can use a cornerback, a few of them. So there's a lot of work to do. And I think that how they shape and mold the roster around the talent they already have, and if you listen to them, they felt like the talent on the roster wasn't coached up, if you will. They didn't use that term, but they just said it wasn't put in the best positions. And I can believe that. I can buy that. You go through two different defensive coordinators in 3 years, and 2 different scheme changes, and you're still the same results. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. You had a head coach. Well, you had actually, what you had was a glorified offensive coordinator impersonating a head coach, because Gailey would be quick to tell you, and he was very candid. I don't know what's going on over there. I haven't coached defense since 1980. Those were his words. He said those words. And he found his friend, Wanstead, who hadn't been a defensive coordinator in the NFL for a long time, since his Dallas days. His last jobs in the NFL were as head coaches, with the Bears and the Dolphins. I believe he was defensive coordinator in Miami, so might be wrong. But still, that was late 90s. Lots changed in 10, 12 years. So we saw the results. They're not good. So anything moving forward, I'm not opposed to. There was a lot of calls for Lovie Smith, and Lovie, to me, and this is the last thing I'll address before I end the video, he seems like a safe choice, but to me, he's Jerron with a pink dress on. He's got a winning record. He's been to the playoffs, albeit once in the last 6 years. His defenses have a lot of talent on them, and they generally play good defense, but they don't beat the Bears much. The Packers, I'm sorry. They don't beat the Packers much. And until Cutler, he had an up-and-down quarterback position. I mean, a revolving door at quarterback. He's always seems to have a revolving door at offensive coordinator, a quarterback coach. His offensive lines are shoddy. So to me, he's really strong on one side of the football, and the other side kind of just generally gets left behind and is, always seems to be up against it, whether it be at playmakers or just whatever. And they suffer for it. You got to score in this league, period. You see the better teams that go into the playoffs and go deep in the playoffs. Those are the football teams that can score and can score quick. Opportunistic defenses that turn the football over and get sacks in key situations, and have offenses that can score in bunches. Those are the teams that win. If you look at the history of Super Bowls, how those they're not fielding the best rushing attacks. They're not fielding the best defenses. A lot of yards are gained in between the 20s. It's the teams that tighten up in the red zone, get turnovers and sacks when they matter, in big situations and turnovers in big situations, those are the teams that generally win and have the better quarterbacks. That's just the way it works. Rookie quarterbacks win in this league. Offenses that they run in college they're not, you know, pedestrian offenses anymore. They're running sophisticated, multiple receiver concepts and a lot of different checks and calls. These kids are getting a lot of that experience in college already, and that's good. And I think, you know, the last few draft classes, we're seeing the benefits of that. I think it's just going to continue. Well, Bills fans, this is, you know, my opinion. I think it's a solid hire. I think it's one of the better hires in a long time. But again, we just have to see how this plays out. Can't judge the man on a press conference alone. Can't judge him on his coach. I mean, you just got to see how the staff gels, see the kind of roster they start to build going forward, the guys they keep, the guys they cut ties with, etc., etc. So until then, you guys have a good one. Take care. Again, please don't judge the man by his press conference. Greg Williams gave the best opening press conference in the history of the Buffalo Bills. I can guarantee that. And what did he do? Even Gailey gave a pretty decent opening press conference. Tough game for tough people, accountability, removing gray area. Look, there was tons of gray area and there didn't seem to be any accountability. He didn't have any answers. All right, Bills fans, I've gone way over the time limit. I didn't mean to take up so much of your time, but, you know, again, we are, you know, it is a new coach hire with, you know, the staff being filled out, and also there's a lot to talk about. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot to talk about in the weeks to come. I'm thinking about starting some sort of chat room or something so we can have like a Bills roundtable. Let me know if you guys are interested. Have a good week.